89.3 Mahoning Drive-In Radio, your old friend Virgil back once again for another exciting episode of the podcast. As you guys know, the only podcast dedicated to the love and revival of our beloved drive-in culture. Joined as always by my co-host and general manager extraordinaire, Mark. Say hello, Mark.
Hello, Mark.
Very nice. And also Jeff, King Jeff in the house, projectionist and owner of the Mahoning Drive-In Theater. Say hello, Jeff.
Good evening, everybody.
And this has been the greatest journey of my adult life, starting up this podcast and being able to talk to true legends in the drive-in culture, and also Hollywood and the industry, spreading that love of what it means to really love film and really be inspired by film and drive-ins, of course, in a way that pivots your entire life. And today we're joined by not one, but two guests, brothers, that is, who are honestly two of the most creative guys that I've ever met, inspirational to no end. And Gene, you guys probably will recognize Gene's name as the guy who asks all the questions whenever we have a Patreon question fish. He's a #1 supporter. But give it up, ladies and gentlemen. We got Bill and Gene Barretta in the house.
Hello.
Yeah.
Nice to be here.
We are so excited to have you guys. And for those of you guys that follow the Mahoning Drive-In Theater, you may have noticed a little event that exploded on our socials when we announced that the Muppets are taking over the Mahoning Drive-In Theater. And the boys are presenting this event. So why don't we start with something very, very basic, very, very simple. You guys are the Muppet guys. You run the Barretta Brothers podcast, which is a Muppet themed podcast. How did you guys get involved with the Muppet world? And what is your place in the Muppet world?
You know what, Virgil? Why don't you mind your own business?
Yeah. Who asked you?
I asked the questions around here.
Yeah, you and who else wants to know?
Me.
Step over this line.
Mark wants to know?
Yeah.
I want to know if Jeff wants to know.
I want to know.
That's all that matters. That's a big question.
A loaded one. I mean, I was gonna literally lay down your credentials and, you know, read some of the stuff that y'all do, but I figured it would be a lot cooler to give them a rev up and see how the Muppets inspired you to where you are, you know?
Yeah, no, I was just actually talking about how we're kind of connected because being younger, I just want to say that I'm younger than Gene. My perspective, there goes Ben. My perspective on it and Gene's are probably very different until they merge, when I start to be involved in Gene's creations, right? Because he was really, if it wasn't for Gene, there's no way I would be involved with the Muppets, because he just always was super creative, and he was always the one who came up with whatever we were going to do with our lives, right? So I always do it as like the bumbling idiot brother who's just like, he would say, "Okay, Billy, all right," he'd have an 8mm camera. And I'd be on the roof. "All right, Billy, jump off the roof." Okay, and then I would jump off the roof. Or okay, we're gonna set you on fire, and then you roll around, and you'll
and action.
It'll go out. And I go, okay.
Yeah, you hope it'll go out.
Yeah, well,
it's good to have a naive younger brother. I'll tell you. I'll talk a little bit about your guys' crossover work with professional work with the Muppets. Gene, you worked on Sesame Street for a little while, am I correct?
Well, I did some animated films for Sesame Street back in the late 90s. They were for season 28 and 29, but they still will run in the show, of course.
C is
the
letter C.
Oh, I love that.
C, the number 10. Empty and Full, None, Some, and All, and some other. But I did some animation for Sesame Street. I even worked on that show Between the Lions, which is some of the same people, and did behind the scenes artwork for like style guides for the puppets and things. And I did a couple books for them.
And is that totally separate? You guys didn't work on that together?
No, no.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
We did he did the storyboards for Muppets from Space. That's the first thing we worked on as far as Muppets go.
Yeah, I did some character designs on 2 programs though that never really got picked up. One was called Late Night Buffet and one was Tinseltown.
Yeah.
But
they're both Henson projects.
Yeah, some of the actual puppets have been used for some other projects, so I see them pop up. Actually, I saw recently one of the monkeys that I designed for Late Night Buffet, Coldplay is on tour and they have a puppet.
Yeah, I saw them. They brought it on SNL, I think. Yeah.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
What's her name? Like Moon something, Angel Moon.
I remember. Yeah.
And she has a band, and one of the band members, the guitarist, is one of my monkeys. But but our friend Nicolette Santino is traveling the world performing Angel Moon, and she's doing such an amazing job.
Oh, that's too cool. Well, at what point, Bill, did you have the opportunity to start voicing and go from character performance to voice, and then more behind the scenes with production and directing?
We had to make a correction.
Oh, that's right. I said it wrong, right? It's not, what did I say? Puppeteers, what wrong?
Well, it's good to make the point because a lot of people are under the impression that the voice is done separately than the puppeteering. But it's almost, other than dinosaurs, usually whoever's puppeteering is providing the voice.
So in this case, you weren't the voice of Earl, or you were?
I wasn't.
You weren't. But in most cases, that is the case.
Yes. Well, with the Muppets, it's the performer or the character is performed by one person. They are the voice and the manipulator of the puppet, right? So, and then sometimes you have somebody who works with you to do one of the other arms or something like that, right?
Right.
You're working with somebody else, but
somebody fully encompasses that character.
Yeah. So Dave Goles is Gonzo, and he does the voice and the puppet manipulation. He's also Bunsen, Honeydew. It's all him, right? Except for hands. Like sometimes I'll do his right hand or something, So, yeah. So thanks, Gene. Yeah, it's not so much voice. Like Frank Oz used to say, the voice is 10% and the rest is all character,
Right.
Because if you listen to Jim or Frank, there's only so many voices you can do, but it's about the character. So if you hear some of Jim's characters, if they're in this range, right, they're this kind of guy. But when the character changes, he could be this kind of guy and be a little different, or it just depends on the attitude, right? So like Rowlf the Dog is very up and fluffy and he's excited, he's but then Dr. Teeth is more gritty, but he's still in this range. Right? So it's about how you approach the character, but you could still use the quality of those voices, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was something I learned from them, because I was like, how do you do all these characters, and I started to realize, well, it's not just actually I used to say voices. How am I going to come up with all these voices? And it was Frank who just said, it's not just about the voice, it's really about the character, and that voice will come.
Yeah.
Even if I wanted to do this and the puppet had buck teeth, it's a little different, but he's still got, maybe he's in that range.
Hey, he's still right in there.
But anyway, so I guess my first thing was, I think after dinosaurs, there was something called Muppet, I think Fairy Tale Theater, maybe.
Yes,
like that.
Yeah.
And we did all of the old fairy tales. Gonzo was Rumpelstiltskin, I think, and my first character was a Elvis elf, and they were all Elvises, they all came out, thank you, and they were they made the shoes or something. I can't. Yeah. What fairy tale is that? I don't know. Like Gene said, my memory's terrible. Anyway, it was an Elvis elf, and I sang a song and got to work with the guys for the first time working with Frank Oz doing Miss Piggy, and it was just amazing. And then I don't know, not too long after that, they did Muppet Treasure Island, and Brian asked me if I wanted to do one of the pirate characters. And he didn't have a lot to do at first. And then I started improvising and playing around, and I started to get more lines, and we figured out the dynamic between these three. It was Polly Lobster, who was Kevin Clash, Mad Monty, the great Jerry Nelson, and I was Clueless Morgan, the goat. And the three of us figured out a vocal dynamic as well as how they related to each other, and so I just started riffing and playing around and had fun. And so from that, I think, am I right about this, Gene? I'm not sure. I can't remember if I did a show called The Animal Show first before Treasure Island, or if Treasure Island came after.
Well, you can consult the family archivist. I'll just look.
If you don't mind checking the library. But either way, the Animal Show was my real training ground, because the Animal Show was about these two characters, Stinky and Jake. One was a skunk and one was a polar bear. And there was a talk show about the wildlife, and characters would come on from the wild, all puppets, right? And we'd show footage from National Geographic or some wildlife company that had footage in the UK, because we shot it there. And we would comment on the footage. And there was, the writers were the great Muppet writers, came up with really funny things that we would describe, like a turtle would be on top of another turtle's back, and it would be like, oh, look, he's taking a cab to work, so it was just weird stuff like that. But the training was because we had to move really fast. We had to shoot 2.5 shows a day. And it was 3 cameras. So you had to figure out, on a line cut, to make sure you're looking in the right place. Because with puppets, the eye focus is very important. If it's just off, you don't believe it, Yeah. So it would cut to the camera, and you'd have to just kind of quickly, or do a slow adjuster, know that it's coming, and you kind of get ready, do a little, like you might just do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that was my training ground, in which I think I did 30 some characters or something.
The Animal Show was 94 to 97. Treasure Island was 96, so you did that in the middle.
Yeah, so Animal Show came first, was my training ground for characters, and that was where I was like, I was still worried about voices, and so I'd go, well, geez, what voice am I gonna do? So if I was doing like Marlon Brando kind of thing, then another character, I would just do it a little higher, but it would be like this. And then another character might be down like this. So right. Having to do all these characters, I was like, oh God, what am I gonna do? But yeah, so from there, I think I did the Swedish Chef, but he didn't speak in Treasure Island. And I did Rowlf the Dog in Treasure Island, but he just laughed.
Right.
They start you with the laughs, and then they promote you to dialogue.
Yeah.
They work you in,
I guess.
Do you go from like right hand to main character? Like, do they use the up and coming puppeteers to be kind of the right hand, literally, in this case?
Well, I don't think there's a
chain, right?
Yeah, there isn't really a process like that for everybody. Everybody's different, I think, how they come into it. And like my favorite thing in Treasure Island that I did, even though I had my first kind of big character in a movie, it was my first movie ever, was I was the hands for Jerry Nelson for a character called Blind Pew. He's if you guys remember him, he comes in, he's looking for Billy Bones, and he comes into the tavern.
Yeah.
The fact that I just got to work with Jerry Nelson, was unbelievable. And I was like, Jerry, what if I do this? And can I grab that? How do you feel? He was like, do whatever you want, man.
Listen, kid.